Hi, I'm Kevin Dahani, and today I'm going to show you step by step how to create this big foam wig using pool noodles. The video is very detailed, so if you need any help along the way, feel free to contact me. For this foam wig, I'm going to start by creating the skull cap. Everything on the wig is going to be attached to the skull cap. And so because I'm going to be using a yellow foam, I try to get my craft foam to match the same color as whatever foam I'm using. That way, if anything shows through, you don't really notice it from a distance. So I've got my 12 by 18 craft foam, and then on top, I'll just lay out my pattern for the skull cap. This is a pattern that I have that you are able to download and to use for a large skull cap. Instead of using paper, I actually make my pattern on foam, craft foam, just because I'm going to be doing and using so many of them. They hold up a lot better than a paper pattern would, and they're also just a little bit thicker, so that way when I'm tracing it around the edges, I can go pretty quick. As where paper, paper doesn't always trace well when you're trying to trace a paper pattern. So that's just a little tip for you. So you're going to cut out 2 of each of the pattern shapes, and then once you cut them out, you're going to glue them together. The skull cap is done, and the 4 individual pieces have been glued together, and so this is what it looks like when it's all done. And to give you an idea, this is the inside. This is almost the identical skull cap that's on the inside of a wig that's already been completed. And so you see how all of the foam attaches to the skull cap. So the next step then is to create the internal structure that all of the pieces of the foam wig are going to be supported by. So to give you an idea, like this tall wig, for example, this big Bouffant wig, the pieces aren't just going to stand up nice and tall like this by themselves. So inside of this are pieces of other pieces of foam. They're sturdier pieces of foam that have been attached, that have been glued onto the skull cap, kind of like this. So maybe for this wig, I'm going to do one this way, and then maybe I'll do one kind of like in the back like this. Kind of give you an idea. So it'll be something like this. So then when I go to attach these pieces, they'll have something to sort of lean on. They don't necessarily have to be glued to the internal structure, but they'll have something inside to lean on to keep the wig propped up. You'll see as we go along in the next step. For this foam wig, I'm making kind of a tall bouffant wig, and so I really need a very sort of a tall internal frame for it. So I have just a leftover piece of the pool noodle, and I'm going to take my electric carving knife and just make a piece. And I can actually cut this one more time. And this is a good tip. What I'm cutting on here, this is, gosh, I'm not even sure the name of it. It's a mat that you can buy at the sewing store. It's actually used to cut out fabric on top of. It's a piece of plastic, and when you cut it, it's sort of self-healing, as long as the cuts aren't too wide or too deep. But you use it to cut out fabric, and I use it to cut everything on. It's great. It protects my surface. So I've got a big piece now of this pool noodle that's cut out. And so when I attach it, it's going to be nice and tall on this skull cap. It'll allow me to create a nice tall bouffant wig. I'm going to show you a little tip for how I attach the structure, how I attach these pieces of pool noodles to the skull cap. So I've got my hot glue gun, and I actually have it on low setting. Too hot of glue totally melts these pool noodles. So I put it on there about right where I want it. And then what I do is I take one or two of these long stick pins and just stick it right into it. What that does is it holds it in place while the glue dries for the next minute or two, and it allows me to move on to the other side and to do the other side. And again, just stick a couple of these pins in place. Let that dry for a minute, and then you just pull the pins out and repeat the process. Quick tip on this, the inside color of these pool noodles doesn't really matter, because once you have everything all covered up using your foam, you don't see that internal structure. So that's why the color of the actual inside, what you've got inside, it doesn't matter what color pool noodles that you use. For the skull cap, I do try to match it to the foam, just because you might see peeking through little cracks here and there. And so for that, I match it. But the inside structure, you're never going to see it. Okay, so in order to know where I'm going to put my back bracing structure, I took a piece of the foam and just took a pin and pinned it in place of about the height and the shape of the bouffant that I want to do for this wig. And so that kind of showed me where about I need to put this back piece. My internal little skeletal structure is in place, and I think that's where I want it to be. I'm going to start doing the foam for the bouffant now. And what's nice about this is that as I go, if I need to adjust this internal structure, it's pretty easy to do. I can just kind of tear it where I did the glue and cut it, or extend it, make it larger, make it shorter. The same with the sides. You could, rather than rip it off of the skull cap though, what I would do is maybe, if I wanted to shorten this, I would cut it here, cut out a section, and then just glue the two pieces back together. So my frame right now, it's a little bit of guesswork. I think that's where I want it, but I'll know more as I go along. So now my first steps then is I'm going to start taking my pieces of the pool noodle that I cut using my scroll saw, and I'm just going to start gluing them down. So for the length, what I'm going to do though is I want my bouffant to be about 10 inches high, but then I'm going to allow at least 8 inches or so more in addition to that, because I'm going to do kind of these big curls at the top of the bouffant when it's done. So I want to leave a little bit of extra all the way around on most of the pieces that I'm going to glue down. Okay, so I'm going to start gluing on the strips of pool noodles. I have a whole bunch of pre-cut strips. They range in size anywhere from 17, 18, 19 inches. And the reason that they vary in size is because, as I mentioned previously, when I get to the end, I'm going to do kind of like this curl thing on top. And the size of the curls are going to vary. Some are going to be a lot larger, some are going to be smaller, just like with real hair. So I'm just going to start by taking my glue gun, putting on some glue on the end, putting it in place on the skull cap, and then I'm going to hold that in place with a stick pin while that dries. And in the meantime, what I'm able to do is to move on, and I can do the next piece. And for this particular wig, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stagger them sort of front, back, front, back, front, back, all the way around like that. So it gives a little bit of more dimension. And the reason I'm starting back here is because this front part of the wig, I will come back when it's all done and I'll do kind of like bangs on the front of the wig. So for now, I'm just going to continue going all the way around and making my bouffant. Okay, so I have a few put down, glued down I should say, on this front row. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start attaching them together. But I'm going to put on some glue here, but I'm only going to go up maybe, oh, I don't know, like 6 or 7 inches or so for now. So I'm going to glue those together. Again, I can take a pin if I want to and just kind of stick it in there to hold that while I glue the next ones together. Like that. Might need a couple of pins, might need one at the bottom and one closer to the top that I did. And I'm just gonna do this for all these. The reason I'm not going all the way up yet is I want to get a whole bunch of them in place before I decide exactly where I'm going to start the curls. And so I might need a little bit more room to play if some of the curls are larger or smaller, and then I can always glue down the rest of the way together. Now, as I get near this side here, on the skull caps are kind of one size when you first make it. What I did though for this sort of sideburn piece is I cut off approximately 1 inch on each side, because I don't want this wig to go kind of like all the way down on the side. And then I cut a little bit even longer strip. This is probably about 20 to 21 inches long. And so I'm gonna start on the side once this little piece is glued down, and then I'm gonna come up like this, and I'm gonna kind of twist it so that it can be glued to this next piece, and so on all the way around the side. And then as you see, once you get to the back, you may need even a longer piece. I haven't measured it yet, but this is probably gonna be pretty long to go from the back all the way up to the top. So that might even be 22, 23 inches long. So that's a good start. I'm just gonna continue with this all the way around. So I started in the middle with this first piece, and I went all the way around the head, going over, under, all the way. And then when I got to this side piece on the end, I went back to the front and I kind of measured and found 2 pieces. As you can see, there's one under and there's one over. I found 2 pieces and I had to cut one down a little bit so that it was going to be a perfect match, so that when I close these together, it kind of all matches up on each side and it'll look perfect. So that's my next step, is to close all of this up, and then I'll show you what I'll do about trimming around the edges. For this next segment, I have my beautiful model, Bella, to help me out. So I finished attaching the pieces all the way around the side. And for this tip, what I want to show is about how you're bringing the pieces of the pool noodle all the way down the skull cap when you're initially putting them on. The reason, if you can hold up this sample, so this is kind of just a sample of a skull cap, and as you see, there's a big generous cut all the way around for where the ear is on all of my the skull cap pattern. So what you're going to want to do when you actually are doing the piece, you're going to want to bring the noodle all the way down past the opening, almost to where this sideburn is in, and go all the way across this way. The reason for doing that is because then you can come back, have the actor or actress put the wig on their head, and you can customize it. You can take a pen or a pencil and you can kind of draw about where their actual ear opening is, because everybody's is going to be slightly different. Then you can have them take off the wig, and you can, with the scissors, all you need, you can use just a regular scissors, is to cut right around where that ear opening is going to be. And you can do the same if you can turn all the way. You can do the same with the back. You can turn all the way around for me. Thanks, Belle. You can do to level out the back, and then do the same thing, keep turning, do the same thing on this side when you're coming and you're cutting out exactly where the ear opening is on this side. Now, For our modeling purposes today, Bella does have a wig cap on, and for those actors and actresses with longer hair, I do recommend using a wig cap. And this is one that we just made using a piece of pantyhose and sewed off the top. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to buy a wig cap. And then just for a quick video, we just threw her hair up really quick. For an actual show, we would do a much better job about slicking all of her hair back, hiding all of these pieces and putting everything under the wig cap, and then the wig would go on top of that. Now here's another little tip or a trick. If the actor or actress has a lot of hair, and if this wig cap is super full and bulging, what you can do is you could actually cut open the inside of the skull cap once the wig is completely done. You can cut open the inside, and there's really this big giant cavity. I don't know if you can see it. There's a whole space inside there that all of this extra hair could go up into the wig for the performance. So just another tip for you. So my next step now is going to be to do those measurements, cut out where the ear section is, make it even all the way around, and then I'll come in and I will add these longer strips. This is a short strip, but I'll add longer strips to do kind of like wavy bangs in the front, and that will finish it off. With the wig on my model, I used a washable marker and I did my markings around her ear, and then I just went back with the scissors and just cut out the exact shape around her ear on both sides, and then I evened it out across the back. So now my next step is to create this tall bouffant. And how I'm going to do that is I'm just going to take all of these pieces of foam together, and I'm going to try to smush them together as strong as I can with my hands, just kind of like you would with your own hair. But I'm going to do it in a way where I'm pushing down, so it's kind of creating sort of this bulge around the front and on the sides. Sometimes some of the pieces will get stuffed in there, and so you can open it back up, stick your hand in there, push the pieces out, and just kind of really don't be afraid to push on them and manipulate them just like you would real hair. So this is the reason why we didn't glue all the way up to the top. So, and I'm just going to do this just for demonstration purposes. Once I get the shape pretty much how I like it, and I'm kind of pushing all of this toward the back, so there's more of this bump sort of in the front. Once I get it squeezed really tight, I'm going to take an actual pony. This one my daughter volunteered and gave to me. And I'm going to put it around all of these pieces of hair so that the pony is holding this across the middle. And then what I'm going to do is I had cut a super extra long piece in the back and left it really long. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to wrap it all the way around as tight as I can where that pony is. And it should almost go around almost twice when it's really tight. And then I can glue it and pin it in place until the glue dries. That's going to be that first step. Because then after that, what I'm going to do with all of these pieces is I'm going to start curling them down, so that the whole top of this bouffant is filled with curls. I've gathered all of the pieces of the foam together into a very tight sort of a top pony. I got the actual pony around all of them, and it's pretty good. I'm very happy with the shape. So before I pull this all the way around tight and glue that off, what I want to do is I want to add a little extra color, a little extra pop to the wig. So what I did was I have all different colors of pool noodles, and so from some long strips like this, some long thicker strips of the orange pool noodles, I cut super thin, maybe 1/4 inch pieces. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go in between each of these sections with one of these strips and just kind of glue that in. And I'll glue it and I'll just go right underneath the pony with it, super simple and straight up. And what it's gonna do, it's just gonna add extra pop to this wig when you see it on stage. Now, you can also achieve this look by painting. I've done it with several of the wigs. I've used airbrushing, I've used regular acrylic paint. You can even use glitter paint, pretty much anything. And for this wig, I'll probably end up painting it as well. So I'm just gonna go, like I said, I'm gonna go through, I'll glue in this section, cut it off at the top here, then go to this next section, glue in another section, so you kind of get the idea of what that's gonna look like. And like I said, it's just gonna add a little extra pop to this wig. I went around and I glued on all of these extra pieces of orange decorative strips, and then I just put them underneath the pony that was on there. And then I took that long piece that was sticking out and I wrapped it around really super tight twice, glued it, and I pinned it. I can take the pins out now because the glue should be dry. And so now the next step is I'm going to start doing the top curls. So what I'll do is I'll probably pin them all first to kind of get an idea of where I want the curls positioned and how they're going to look. And the curls, for the most part, they're going to come down and they're going to hide this big wide band. And what's cool about this is, like, see, some of these curls are going to be a little bit smaller and they're going to be up on top like this. And if I want to do an extra curl down here, I can just add one in. I can take an extra piece of the foam and just make a small curl and just glue it in. And I probably will do that to fill in certain places, and you'll never know that it's not one of the curls from one of the sections. Then after I do the curls, I'll take these extra pieces, bring them down, and just kind of glue them on, just again as sort of an extra decorative piece onto these curls. Some of the pieces will end up just getting snipped off. So that's the next step, is to do all of the top curls. All the top curls are done. And there were several that I just added in as extras, just to fill in certain spaces and to make it look more uniform all the way around the head. And then I just took extra little pieces of the orange and wrapped each of them so that they match the bottom pieces. So now that all the curls are done, the last step will be to do the bangs. And for that, I'm just going to take strips of the pool noodle and put them on, some going this way and then the rest going that way. The tall bouffant wig is now complete. After finishing all of the curls and then all of the accent striping, the last thing to do was the bangs. And basically all I did was cut long triangular strips of the foam and just kind of glued those on a layer. And as I layered them, I kind of put extra little pieces underneath so that they would kind of, they'd be a little bit more 3D and they'd kind of stick up and stand up a little bit. And then I just cut some extra little pieces of the orange accent pieces and just glued those on as well. I can still do some additional painting if I want to. Maybe I'll add a little bit of glitter paint just to jazz it up a little bit. But for all intents and purposes, it's ready for the stage.